Today we're here to really talk about sustainability, climate action, in with athletes and former athletes and with eco-athletes. So first of all, thanks Lou for helping organize this and for Riley and Lou to participate in this chat. What I was thinking we can do is have a short introduction, Riley and Lou first, and then I have a few questions to ask you, and then after that, we'll talk about EcoAthlete, and we'll do some Q&A with the audiences as well. We have a few people here that also may not be from EcoAthletes, but work in that space. So I'd be really happy to hear from them as well. If that sounds good for everybody, we can get started. If Riley or Lou want to start with your...
Yeah, I can.
Right, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for organizing this, Miriam and Lou. I appreciate it. My name is Riley Barr. I'm an eco athlete and currently work for a company called Blue Strike Environmental. So I do sustainability consulting with sporting events. And I previously ran cross country and track for Florida State University. So I joined Eco Athletes in I need Lou to quote me, I think 2022 or 2021. So I've been a part of EcoAthletes for a couple years now, and it's been a great community of networking with other athletes at, I think, similar levels. So it's collegiate, post-collegiate, professional, and Olympic levels. So it's been a great community to be a part of, and using the platform as an athlete and now retired athlete, still in sporting events to promote sustainability through athletics. I'll pass it to Lou.
Yep. Thank you.
Hey everyone. Lou also, but LOU. Not Lou from EcoAthletes. I'm Lou. I work at New York Roadrunners currently, the organization that puts on the TCS New York City Marathon, as well as 50 to 60 other races throughout the year, including youth event, and other programs throughout the New York City community. I work as the Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility Coordinator at New York Roadrunners, which falls under the DES department as a whole. We're a small but mighty team here at New York Roadrunners. A little bit about New York Roadrunners. A lot of people don't know, but we're actually a nonprofit. And so that puts us at an interesting kind of situation where we do put on one of the largest sporting events in the world, but we are essentially a nonprofit. So we function as one, and our resources and our mission is to give back to the New York City community, especially underserved communities, and youth programs around the city. And yeah, I am a retired NCAA athlete. I went to Rutgers University, where I did my undergrad and my graduate degrees. Fell right on the cusp of COVID when I graduated my undergrad, so I just figured I would stay, do a graduate degree right after my undergrad, which worked out really well. And that's about where I met Lou. We met when I was preparing for my capstone, which was required to graduate with the degree that I did. I'm happy to talk more about that in the conversation to come. But yeah, that's a little about me.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing. What we're trying to do here is really inspire other athletes and people within the athletal community to connect with EcoAthlete and kind of get started in this space, if that's something they're passionate about. So I'm hoping that your stories and your experiences will inspire others. So I want to start with a couple of questions to you two, and then we'll pass it on to Lou as well. First of all, and any one of you can start to answer, what inspired you to become involved in the environmental space? And was there a specific moment or event that sparked that inspiration, that start?
I can start, if that's okay. Yeah, I think what sparked my interest in environmental was, well, I guess I grew up in a household where my mom honestly was a big factor in our household. Recycling, compost, gardening outside. So that was my just my upbringing. And when I went to Florida State University, I kind of there just wasn't recycling in Tallahassee. I kind of saw there was a lot of opportunity around me, and that opened my eyes to think, there's areas that, I could use my voice and use my platform, especially as an athlete at Florida State University to promote this and bring this here. So that's where I was inspired to join EcoAthletes to, have a larger platform there. That was my initial introduction to environmental interests and how I would kind of get on that track. And it was only about halfway through my time at Florida State University. So halfway through my bachelor's, I realized that there is a whole industry out there in sustainability and environmentalism. So that's when I decided to pivot my career choices at that time and get my master's at Florida State University again in social and sustainable enterprises. So it was gearing towards sustainability.
Well, I'm glad that you found that early enough that you were able to make an academic pivot. That's really exciting. What about you, Lou?
Yeah, I came to it a little bit later than you, Riley, I think. I did my undergraduate degree just in public health, the general public health field. I didn't really have a concentration at that point. I started at Rutgers majoring in, I think, kinesiology, and then I switched to math. And I just like really didn't know what I was doing, where I wanted to go, realized I didn't want to be a personal trainer. I didn't want to be in kind of that medical sports field. So I just went for public health as the general idea of it, studied a lot about global health, um, underserved communities, global health perspectives. And then, yeah, like I said, I graduated in the spring of 2020. So I didn't we can all relate to this, but no one really knew where we were going. And for me, that was kind of a pivotal point because my NCAA career was ending and stopped earlier than I thought it was going to. I thought I had kind of a disappointing first 4 years at Rutgers. I didn't really reach any of the athletic potential I wanted to reach or that I thought I could. So for the track people out there, essentially I didn't really get better from high school to college. So it was just really disappointing. And so at that time, my spring season got cut short. And since I was a senior, that was it. It was like you're done. COVID happened. You're just going to graduate online. You will not be running in the NCAA anymore. And at that time, the coach decided to leave. I don't actually know what happened, but we hired a new coach who came from University of Maryland who called me right away and said, "Listen, you have 2 years of eligibility in the NCAA," because I had redshirted freshman year and sophomore year, some of it. And he said, "If you apply to grad school at Rutgers now, you can just stay and run another 2 years." So for me, it was like, absolutely. What else am I going to do? This is great. Everybody always says if you don't go to grad school straight after your undergrad, you're so much less likely to do it. So I was just like, this is great. Everything lined up. So applied to the School of Public Health at Rutgers. So I just stayed there for another 2 years, and that's kind of where I started developing an idea of wanting to join the sports sustainability field. Essentially, like Riley, I didn't really know that there was such a big market for this industry. Obviously now it's growing exponentially, right? So um, it's building, but I mean, at the time, I really didn't know. I wanted to work at like organizations like Doctors Without Borders, which is still incredibly interesting to me. Um, but yeah, so I concentrated in environmental health sciences, which ended up being a lot more scientifically focused than I expected. A lot of toxicology, a lot of environmental risk assessment, which was really interesting to me. But I decided to dive a little bit deeper in the sustainability world. And then in terms of connecting sports with that, Riley, you can probably also relate to this, but after 6 years as a runner in the NCAA, 20 hours a week, um, traveling every single weekend, it is kind of like a full-time job. And so it essentially felt like a second degree for me. Like the amount of time and effort I spent just understanding the sport of running and practicing it, it felt like a total waste to just throw that out the window and not go into the field of sports. Like I wanted to stay in running, but of course that's was a little less likely, but I wanted to stay within sports. So that's kind of when I bridged the connection between sport and sustainability, thanks to Lou and EcoAthletes help there. But yeah, and then similarly to Riley, I grew up in a European household that was very um minimalist, I would say. I was raised to use as little as possible, eliminate waste where I can. So I grew up like that, but I didn't necessarily realize that until kind of recently. So yeah.
Great. Thank you for explaining how it came about with sort of like the parallel with your retirement for sport, because I think it's important. And listening to the two of you, it seems that you both met EcoAthlete, and that was kind of a pivotal moment in like giving you some direction for life after sport. And so I wanted to ask you how indeed EcoAthlete has supporting you through that transition away from sport and into your professional career. For those of us that from Athlete School who don't know as much about EcoAthletes, can you like share some kind of example of how this has helped you?
Riley, I can start if but you
You
go
got
ahead.
it. You can go first.
Okay. Yeah, it was upon trying to spell out what I would do for my capstone, which was kind of that final requirement for graduate school, that I stumbled upon EcoAthletes. I mean, I had built this interest in sports sustainability, like I said, but I knew I wanted to do my capstone in that, and I knew it wasn't necessarily very linearly aligned with my degree, but I knew that my advisor at the time kind of said, if it's something you're passionate about, go ahead and try to make that work as your capstone. And so my project was pretty much, and I had to do an internship or a study with a specific group or whatever I wanted essentially, and then relate that to my studies. And so that's when I emailed Lou and I ran into EcoAthletes and I said, is there something here? What can we do? And immediately Lou said, well, you're now an EcoAthletes champion. You're now part of the group. And let's work together to kind of figure out a project that um, works with your interests and what you studied. And so Lou very quickly, took me under his wing, introduced me to a organization called Racing to Zero that's based in Canada, led by 3 to 5 Olympians, former and current Olympians. Um, and I worked with them for like 3 to 4 months. They do essentially like carbon accounting and GHG accounting for large sports organizations. I think right now they're only based in Canada, but I worked with them on 3 big projects with a national sports organization, and then wrote my capstone on how athletes are both kind of contributors and victims of climate change. And so that was essentially sparked by my connection with EcoAthletes, right? The founder and CEO of Racing to Zero, Shay Smith, is an EcoAthlete himself. And so it it was like an immediate connection between us. Lou bridged that gap. He said, what are your interests? You ran track, and then connected me right with Shay Smith, who ran in the Olympics. I think in 2012 he was on the 4x100 team, and then he competed in the Winter Olympics twice in bobsled. So a remarkable athlete. And so making that connection right away was absolutely awesome. And then EcoAthletes also helped me make a connection that led me to the job that I have now at New York Roadrunners. So, my current manager now at New York Roadrunners is in capacity works with EcoAthletes Lou. So that like networking also was just like so helpful.
That's fabulous. The power of that community is incredible. Louis, maybe you should take a commission on all these job placement at some point.
Yeah.
Definitely should.
No, you know what? And we'll get into it later, but just hearing these stories, it just and seeing the other EcoAthletes champions on the call, including one who still has my name on there down there. I know I'm the only Lou Blaustein here, I think, but sorry for that kind of technical glitch. But hearing them, it just confirms, and the commission is, I know we're doing the right thing. We are on the right course because these people, Lou and Riley and the others on the call as well, bring the necessary passion, intelligence, commitment, and consistency to go for what we call the climate comeback. And it's just incredible to me to know these people. And so, anyway, I'll be quiet now.
I know I have a thought from that. Lou, I had been asked this before of like how environmentalism relates and sustainability relates to athletics, and I think something Lou just said sparks this like common thought of the parallel between athletics and sustainability is it takes that drive and persistence and putting in, that daily you need daily motivation to have a climate comeback and to contribute. It takes a lot of effort and resilience for that. So I think that's just a parallel between athletes at this level or any level to provide and bring into the sustainability space and climate comeback. But to answer the question about EcoAthletes, that is actually what led me to my job as well. So like I said, I didn't know there was an industry in sustainability. I met Lewis would know this. Sadie was connected me into EcoAthletes when I was during my time at Florida State University. And I connected with Sadie and Lewis, and I was just asking for recommendations of who to talk to. I kind of just wanted that understanding of what does daily life, what do tasks look like in a sustainability career and job. Like I just have no idea what I'm going into. So I was just networking with people, hopping on Zoom calls almost daily towards the end of my graduate degree and just understanding what these people were doing. So one person led me to another. I actually ended up going to Green Sports Alliance and meeting a bunch of people there that were in eco athletes and in sports and sustainability space. That is where I met my current employer. My CEO of Blue Stripe Environmental was at Green Sports Alliance. So I went to the Seattle one, that was in 2023, and then I started working for Blue Stripe Environmental just 2 or 3 months after that. So that is EcoAthletes, the network there led me to my job, and now I have actually like a sustainability board, and through EcoAthletes, I love connecting other people. So if anyone has the slight interest of sustainability from Florida State University or people from home in Ohio, for me, if they're interested in sustainability, I love connecting them with people I think align with their interests. Sometimes if they're more on the calculation and data side or strategy or just wherever they fall on in sustainability, I love trying to connect them. And that's what EcoAthletes really serves as a great network. And I would say there's a level. So I think like Lou and I are both involved in strategizing and putting on events. And then there's also the, actual competing athletes that are at the Olympic and professional levels. And they are inspiring and eco athletes as they're using their platform and their say on a team or at those, Olympic levels to drive sustainability and have a voice there. So that's the pros of eco athletes.
Thank you, Riley. And I love what you brought up of not knowing what a career in sustainability look like. I think it's a question that we get a lot with current athletes about any career, right? What a day in the life of looks like. What am I going to be doing? And so I'd love for you to, and we have a few others, obviously eco champion, but also even athletes or people that also work in that space in different ways. But I'd love for you to give us some examples of the impact and the initiatives that you work on a regular basis, or something that you're working on at the moment, just so we have a concrete example.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, and another thing too is I think as athletes we're driven to work in, healthcare. I was pre physical therapy or pre chiropractic because that's what you see. Those are the people you work with during your athletic career. So it's just knowing you don't know what you don't know. So as soon as you can get familiar with a new career and industry, yeah, then you can, kind of see yourself in that. So yeah, so something concrete that I'm doing. So I do event sustainability for Blue Shirt Environmental nationally. So I travel around. I do year-round consulting for, I'm mostly on PGA Tour and Live Golf. So both those leagues, planning their events to be more sustainable, and we focus on waste diversion. So that's just as much waste, getting as much waste out of the landfill as possible. So organizing, doing market research of, okay, in let's see, my next trip is in Miami. So I've worked there a couple times. I have connections there now, because it's a repeat market, but understanding the infrastructure there. Do they have recycling? Do they have compost? Where can I take food donations to? Where can I recycle, hard to recycle items like mesh, turf, all these things, any materials that are brought to these special events. And I know that Lou's gonna have other special materials in racing, like their bibs and goos, stuff like that. So it's really as in depth as possible you can get for all the materials that you're bringing on site, and then understanding where those can go. So then I travel on site during the week of the event to make sure, everything's going as planned. I do an audit, so I'm taking pictures of, what the vendors are doing there, kind of making notes for next year, or, checking on the compost, making sure it's clean and going to the right people. And then afterwards, the focus is data collection and communication. So I will collect data for greenhouse gas emission calculations, which is collecting like all the freight details, catering, number of meals, number of like beef and meat meals compared to vegetarian or vegan meals served. That's just an example, but collecting data like that from everyone that's coming to these events. So the caterers putting it on to the amount of water they have at refill stations is data I collect so we can track that year over year or event to event. And then I compile that for them in, whatever delivery reports they need. So it's going to be like PowerPoints. We also do it on social media. So I provide that technical verbiage for them to use. And then yeah, we also go to sponsors. That's another piece is if we want to get green sponsors, or sustainability sponsors at events, I'm helping that collaboration of, saying what we're doing at this event and how people can help. And a big emphasis too is bringing in community partners, which is my favorite thing. So, like I said, Miami is a market I've worked in year over year. So I have the same compost outlet, and I'm able to put them on signs and, bring them on site so they can have a booth or a table to talk to the public and the attendees that are coming to these events of how can you compost at home and how can you get involved and help in your local community. So that's probably my favorite aspect of it.
Great. Thanks for sharing so much detail. It's really interesting to hear the whole process and the whole journey of the event, the cycle. Lou?
Yeah. So similarly, Riley, not the same, but very similarly, what you do now sounds like what I did at Racing to Zero. So same idea. We were hired by a national sports organization to essentially do a full audit of sorts of three of their biggest events. It was like literally after connecting with EcoAthletes and meeting Shay Smith, I was just thrown into it. Like you said, Riley, I didn't know what it would look like for me. I hadn't studied sustainability in school. It was just something that like I truly wanted to be in the field. And so yeah, joining Racing to Zero was just like getting fully thrown, building that database, like you said, auditing the waste, water, energy, everything, and giving them kind of a strategy moving forward on how they could reduce in all these areas and, spelling out what the low-hanging fruit were for them, where the investments would be. And so, yeah, I found that really, really interesting. What I do now is similar, but like I said, New York Roadrunners is a nonprofit in the sports industry, and we're at a really good place right now where it seems like every person wants to run a marathon these days. So we're at a really good place to leverage what we offer as a program, and that's best in class, sporting events. Um, we have a race almost every single weekend. A lot of people don't know that. So our premier events, we have three kind of our marquee events is what we call them. The TCS New York City Marathon, which happens the first Sunday of November every single year. This past year, we broke the record for the largest marathon in the world, which was really awesome. Our other one is the United Airlines NYC Half, which takes place in March. And then we have the RBC Brooklyn Half Marathon, which takes place in May. So those are our three like massive tens of thousands of people marquee races. And then otherwise we have 5K, 10Ks. We have the Fifth Avenue Mile, which is a big kind of like showy TV race for pro athletes and a lot of other New Yorkers to just race a downhill mile straight down Fifth Avenue, which is really awesome. Um, but yeah, so doing all of that requires a lot of consumption, right? So in hosting the biggest marathon in the world comes a lot of international athletes, comes a lot of everything you can think of, right? Working with city agencies, working with partners, because like I said, being a nonprofit, we rely heavily on partners and what they provide to us. So yeah, essentially my job is we've committed to be net zero by 2040, and my job is how do we get there? So everything from waste, working with city agencies, partners, communications to our members, to our runners, everything encompassed essentially to help us get to net zero by 2040. And in terms of my day to day, one of my big projects recently was launching a new program called Team for Climate. So we became the first major marathon in the industry to launch a entry method to the race tied to sustainability efforts. So like I said, we kind of have the hot ticket in town, right? Everybody wants to run a marathon. So we thought, how can we use that to help drive our sustainability efforts, which are like a huge, huge pillar in our organization, which I'm super thankful for. Like our CEO, the entire senior leadership team is completely to be a leader in the space of sustainability and running. And so we said we have the New York City Marathon. Everybody seems to want to run it. How can we take that to our advantage and help drive our sustainability efforts with the help of our runners and our donors? So yeah, I came on, and my big project right away was launching this Team for Climate initiative, which is kind of mirrored after our Team for Kids charity program. So as a nonprofit, we have an internal charity program called Team for Kids, where essentially you can register as a fundraiser. You have a fundraising minimum. Once you hit that minimum, you get a guaranteed entry to one of our premier events. And so we took that logistical idea and we said instead of the money going to Team for Kids, a charity program, it's going to be toward our sustainability efforts. And so we launched that in at the 2024 TCS New York City Marathon. It sold out in 90 seconds. We kind of had that first program. It was small but mighty. It was only 200 to 250 people who fundraised $3,000 each, and they fundraised well over their goal. We raised close to $800,000 thanks to our fundraisers, and we provided them with kind of a sustainable race day experience as we could. So given this was the first kind of edition of this program, we knew that we wouldn't do everything perfectly, but the idea was to launch it, do it well, and then grow from there. So this program, like I said, we gave them kind of a special VIP experience, right? Because as fundraisers, we want to make sure that they have a special experience, not just like any other runner in the marathon. So they had their own transport to the starting line. They all took the Staten Island ferry there together. They got to race in a singlet that we made evergreen, so it's not branded with the New York City Marathon logo. It's branded with our Team for Climate logo, and it has the climate stripes on it, which represent kind of the warming of the planet over time for the past 100 years, or maybe 250 years. London Marathon actually has a section on their marathon course that's dedicated to the climate stripes. So they have it painted on the ground as like as a space that runners run over, and then also on the guardrails on the marathon course. So, and a lot of other sports teams are starting to make kind of their jerseys with the climate stripes on them to help educate the fans. So we thought, let's do that. Let's give them all singlets, climate stripes on them, and it made a huge statement. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but we had a lot of great media impressions. Our runners were really happy with their experience. They also had an electric generator powered start tent. So we kind of tried to hit all those little pieces that we thought maybe these people aren't passionate about sustainability, or maybe they are. But if they are not, let's try to educate them while ensuring that they still have that best in class experience. And so, yeah, not to go on a tangent, but essentially the program, we launched it, really great feedback, and it is continuing now. We just launched for both the United Airlines NYC half in March and the RBC Brooklyn half in May. Both programs are sold out. And similarly, runners are fundraising to help fund our sustainability efforts. So that's a little look into my day to day. Yeah,
Wow.
it was an honor to launch this program. It had been in the works for several years at New York Runners, so it was kind of my big like, you get here, this is your task, let's get it off the ground, let's get it running. And we did. So really, really proud of that.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a big effort. Well done for doing that. And to both of you, it's really exciting to see that you've been able to combine kind of two passions into a professional career. I think that's something that athletes can all kind of be, aspire to, right? Is like being able to perhaps stay in your sport and do something different, but that still contributes. I'd like to come back to you guys, to you two girls, with a few questions, but I want to take some time for Lou to introduce EcoAthlete. Introduce yourself, and then EcoAthlete. Tell us a little bit more, and then we can do more Q&As, and we can include everybody as well.
Sounds great. And first of all, Miriam, thank you so much for having Lou and Riley, just phenomenal EcoAthletes champions, and to invite me to this. And what I don't know if you all know, but Miriam is an EcoAthletes champion. And she, and what she's doing with Athlete Soul is so much a part of what we're trying to do as well, in terms of building the climate comeback from this generation and up. And and so I just want to thank you, Miriam. So EcoAthletes, we are about to hit our 5th anniversary, which I can't believe, April 7th. And we're a nonprofit, and our mission is to inspire and coach athletes to lead climate action. And the reason why we exist is because of a couple of facts. Athletes are the most influential humans on the planet, and this is not just me talking. I mean, I am talking and saying the words, but there are data behind it that show that athletes, on average, are more influential than entertainers, singers, actors, actresses, politicians. And athletes have led on all manner of social issues going back many decades. And you all are familiar, I'm sure, with the Billie Jean Kings of the world and the Muhammad Alis of the world and the Colin Kaepernicks of the world. But on climate, athletes have largely stayed on the sidelines, and this is true even when you include those who are environmentally interested or environmentally active. And so, and just to go back a little bit, in 2013, I started writing a blog called Green Sports Blog, and then later a podcast, Green Sports Pod. And so I was writing about this intersection that back in 2013 was even more kind of nascent and just starting to get going. My work had been before that in sports marketing, advertising, sales, and business development, and then pivoted to marketing, communications, and business development, but in sustainability. Anyway, so the blog married my two passions. And as I would talk to athletes who were environmentally active, this is going back now 11, 12 years, doing things like plastic, e-waste recycling drives and beach cleanups, I would ask them, are you also talking about the connection of those good works to climate? And 9 out of 10 of them would say no. And that really concerned me. And so over time, I thought because I asked them, why were you not taking that next step? And they were saying, and the same objections still to this day keep coming forth. It's too sciencey, and I don't know about the science, and I don't feel comfortable talking about something about which I know little. It's too political, and I don't want to stick my neck out on a political issue. And it's this is the one I get the most. I'm gonna get hammered on social media for being a hypocrite because I fly all over the place for my sport, and my professional carbon emissions are through the roof. And I would hear these objections, I would hear these fears, and I would say to myself, wait a minute, I know how to kind of flip that negative and turn it, at least neutralize it, and maybe even turn it into a positive. And so over time, this led me to think there needed to be an organization that helped environmentally interested or uh, or what we call climate curious athletes to overcome those obstacles, those fears, and get off the sideline and lead on climate. So that led to introducing EcoAthletes, and in April 5 years ago, and during the middle of the first wave of COVID, it was crazy. And like I said, the mission is to inspire and coach athletes to lead climate action. And the way we work to go about it is to provide our growing global network of EcoAthletes champions, Lou and Riley, and several others on this call, Emily, Kim, Gary, Deja, and someone else named Lou Blaustein, and Miriam, and Madeline, who had to leave earlier, um, to provide the champions with the tools to advance from climate curious to climate leader. And those tools are, and in no particular order, they're community, because if you're alone on your team, or you're alone, or you feel alone in terms of your interest and your passion on this, that doesn't give you the feeling of being empowered. Well, with us, you're not alone. We have chats like this, community chats. We have engaging events like the upcoming EcoAthletes Collegiate Cup, and other ways for the champions to connect. That's community. On social media, we work with our athletes. There are some, none on this call, but there are some who don't feel comfortable talking about climate on social. So we do one-on-one, find your climate voice on social sessions with athletes who request them, champions who request them. And I would say maybe 5 or 8% have done that, and they have become much more prolific on social talking about climate. We do thought leadership. You know, the athletes either come to us and they kind of get more comfortable about talking about it, or some come to us and they're already ready to talk about it. And we, for those champions, once they're ready or when they're ready from the get-go, we get them on panels like this. We get them to talk at conferences and at other events. We get them on podcasts. And we've also been able to get our champions to speak on traditional media. And just to give you an idea, at Paris 24, we had 17 EcoAthletes champions from all over the world, 6 won medals, and we were able to get a bunch of them interviews on BBC, Sky Sports in the UK, NBC Sports, ESPN here, CBC, Australian media, Indian media, in Spanish, because we have 8 Spanish speakers, a couple were Olympians, we got them on Colombian media. And we totaled up the reach, the media impressions that were generated from those champions' media hits, and it was about 40 million, which is significant, especially for an organization that's very grassrootsy and small like us. And so that just shows the power. So that is thought leadership. Another pillar is what we'll call sponsorship connections with climate active brands or endorsements. And that's something that's increasingly a thing where green brands are looking to connect with athletes who are credible to promote their product or service or nonprofit. And in college sports, which is a growing area of real strength for us, that means NIL. And then there's mentorship. And that's where, included in mentorship, is climate communications for athletes webinars, where one-on-one sessions, where we work with the champions who are not so confident to become confident in speaking about it and overcome those fears of, hypocrisy and too political, too sciencey. And one example, a really good example, is with Nafisa Collier. Some of you have heard of her. She is the co-founder of Unrivaled, which is the new 3v3 women's basketball league, along with her fellow UConn alum Breanna Stewart, and Nafisa was second in the MVP voting in the WNBA, etc. She is a star. Anyway, when she came to us, she was definitely in the climate curious end of the spectrum, but she was not confident. She didn't know a lot about it. What she knew was that she knew that she wanted to become a mom. And she knew that for the next generation, her kids that are not yet born, that climate was going to be a massive issue for them. And so we did 2 one-on-one sessions where we dealt with what her fears were. And she went from being really at the beginning to now having been interviewed on a number of those media outlets that I just mentioned, and has been she's truly a leader in this now. And so that's one example of mentorship. The other, most relevant to this conversation, is where we do career coaching, and also, and we do it in 2 levels. One is, and what is relevant is what we've done with Lou and Riley, is we find out what they're interested in. We see where we know people who could be connectors for them. And then we make the connections based on what we have heard. And then they go and do the rest. So for introductions, that's the basic, career coaching that we do, networking, and we do some like, hey, these are the questions you should ask. But our champions, they're good. They know how to do it. Um, um, for some, because everything that I've just mentioned, we do that. We don't charge the athletes at all. The one thing we do charge them for, and this has been a couple of champions, maybe actually four, where we do real career coaching, where we're helping them with their resume, helping them with their cover letters, doing a job search plan, and then keeping tabs to make sure that they're hitting their marks. But that's a very small number, and we do charge for that. Everything else, all of those, community, uh, uh, thought leadership, social media, sponsors, endorsements, and mentorship, we don't charge. And so, anyway, that's probably long enough.
No, that was
Hopefully.
not long enough, and that's great to hear all the things that you guys have been doing because it's obviously a very dynamic. You said small organization, but really dynamic. From what I have seen, over the years, is just like really active, really engaged group of individual. I want to ask you a follow-up question. If you can share with the group what areas of sustainability is EcoAthlete actively engaged in? Are there specific areas? Is it the whole spectrum? Like, can you tell us a little bit about this? I don't know if I'm asking that.
I'm not, I'm going to ask you a question so that I know if I'm answering the question that you asked. So if you're asking what type of job tracks do we kind of point our champions to? That's one way I heard the question. The other way I heard the question is what are we doing in terms of our own sustainability? Is that
I
what?
think it could be multiple angles. I was thinking that we have spoken a lot about sport and sustainability so far. Do you also support athletes who may not want to be involved um, in sustainability in sport, but just in sustainability in general? And what does that look like?
So, okay. So that now I got it. So a lot of the athletes in terms of the athletes, the champions who are looking to make a who are engaging with eco athletes because of an interest in their careers. The majority are interested in the sports sustainability intersection. Um, and that intersection, and I'll just spend a couple minutes on that, is really growing, and it's also still early days. So you can really make your, um, you can make your way in it by almost creating your own projects, your own jobs, etc. But now you'll see more jobs that are actually being advertised as sports sustainability jobs. There's a job, in fact, Riley for EcoAthletes runs a sustainability job board on LinkedIn, and there is a job. You may have heard that Los Angeles is hosting the 2028 Olympics, and there is a job in the sustainability titled job for LA 28. And so several of our champions I know are applying to that, and there are some that I probably don't know who are applying to that. Um, so there are so the types of jobs that we see in sports sustainability specifically are like the kind of jobs that Riley and Lou are doing, um, where they are helping events become greener. We are also seeing people at facilities. So that's who Riley might be a client of Riley's, could be a sports stadium, a sports arena, a golf course, a tennis event, where the person on the other side of the desk is also responsible for engaging on making the event more environmentally friendly or have a lower carbon footprint. Now you'll also see more environmental communications and climate communications roles in sports. So that's a whole nother area. Then you're also seeing in academia, there's a whole discipline now called, I'm going to call it sport ecology as kind of an umbrella term. And there is, peer-reviewed academic research and also positions at universities all over the world and people who are devoting their career to the effects of climate change on athletic performance, the impacts of sports events on climate change. How can, you know, uh, and it's really growing. So there's academia. There also is, so and then there are opportunities that I think are not are still there for the taking. And I think sports media is the laggard here. And I think that if I was a young person and I was into this, I would try and go to NBC, CBS, ESPN, and talk about not only how you can make a production much less carbon intense, but how you can engage fans in this. Because so much of the green sports world is focused on the events themselves. But most humans don't go to sports events. Most humans do follow sports, though. And how do you get to them? And there are going to be jobs in that. And yes, we have an administration now that is, to say hostile about this, is to undersell it. But you know what? This is the environment, pun intended, we're in. Headwinds are much stronger than they've been. Our work is harder now. It's also more important. And I know that athletes are up for challenges. So I know that, so that's one part of your question, Miriam, and I'm sorry. Then in terms of the smaller group of champions, but also significant, are interested in jobs in environmental policy. And we have, people who work in that space and who have, you know, and in some cases we've helped them. In some cases they've gotten there on their own. But what we always want to do, and we do have connections into the what I'll call green world that's not sports, if you want to go that way. What we always say is, if you're looking for work, if you're looking to make a difference in the climate comeback in green and sports, we can help. If you're looking to do that, if you're looking to help, but not necessarily in the sports world, but in the quote unquote green world, we can also help. If you want to be like a dentist or an astronaut or whatever, important jobs, believe me, we cannot help you there. And we won't pretend that we can.
Okay, that was super clear and it makes sense. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at the time briefly because I want to make sure we stay on schedule. But I wanted to ask you, so we have a community that is perhaps more former athletes than current competing athletes. We do support some younger athletes, but our community is a little bit older. We have a lot of supporters and former athletes. Can you, perhaps to conclude, explain to us how can those who are competing can get involved, and then those who are former athletes and perhaps even way further in their years as former athletes get involved as well, as a conclusion?
Well, I mean, certainly, with athletes, with those who are still in their active career, their active athletic career, I'm going to make a kind of division within that segment. One are the student athletes. So they're already looking for jobs, right? Or looking for their next, whatever their thing is that's next that doesn't involve sports, being on the field or the court or whatever. And so they're already doing that. And so it's a natural, what we're doing is amplifying what they're already doing or really should be doing. Then there are the athletes who are beyond college and are in their pro career, and then that's winding down and they're deciding that they want to get into a green sports job. And you're well aware of this, Miriam, they're dealing with issues of, well, I've been playing a sport for 8 years or whatever it might be, and I don't have traditional experience. How do I sell myself? And so we help them both we showed them that they've been doing, are you kidding me? If they're a pro athlete, especially let's say in an individual sport like tennis or golf or surfing or whatever, they're they're running a business, they're overcoming obstacles, they're management, they're dealing with labor, they're dealing with budgets, they're dealing with over like and some of those people who have ended up getting jobs after that, even even though they don't have the traditional experience, they do really well. And I think that also is an approach that we would use with athletes who have been retired for quite some time, but are looking to get into the climate slash sustainability slash environment world, including and potentially including with sports. And there's one example, and obviously every situation is different. Um, um, you know, because some people may have saved some money, so they don't have to get that job right away, and they can, you know, get some other training. Or in some of our cases, we've had champions who, and one now is volunteering with us on a project, um, and we even offered to pay, but she didn't want to take it. But so she's worked and had a career, but now she's trying to transition into this area, and so she's getting experience this way. But some people don't have that luxury, and there, uh, you know, there it's a case by case basis, and we talk to folks and we find out what they've done, and then we find out where we can connect them, where we think those people can add value. Anyway, I hope that wasn't too long.
No, that was fine. And what I gather from all of this is that maybe for all of the people that athletes who may want to learn more, who are climate curious, want to push it to the next level, whether they are actively competing or retired or further down the road, or even if they already work in that space. We have a couple of people here, Rach, Mike, who are pretty active in the green space. May I think the simplest way is perhaps to reach out to you, Lou. We're going to be sharing your
I put my
contact.
email just in the chat right now. So if I don't know you, and now I see that there's only one of me here. If I don't know you and you're interested in what we've been saying, please reach out. Happy to talk. And yeah.
And we'll share that on our community platform as well. I guess the conclusion is whatever you're interested in, whatever energy you want to put towards this space is always welcome. And basically, EcoAthletes is there, right, to assist you and make it grow even further.
Absolutely, and I think, the one thing I'll say is that the community of champions that we've built is just incredible,
Yep.
incredible, and helpful, and caring and really committed and and are so willing to help the other person. And the ethos is just amazing. And yeah, so happy to welcome anybody who wants to reach out. I'll get back to you right away.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Lou. Riley, thank you so much also for sharing what you're doing between sports and what's happening now for you. And good luck with everything that you continue on doing your different initiatives with your two organizations. Lou, go ahead. You have one more thing to say.
Yeah, one more thing to say, and this is broader beyond, and it might be obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway, and this is broader than simply green and sports related jobs, but certainly includes that. Like whatever your job is, if you have a job now and you're trying to get to another job that is more in line with what you want to do, still, is there a way you can make your current job a sustainability job? Like, like, because there is, and several of our champions would tell me that they've done that they did this project when they were either at school to help the athletics department do blah, 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 blah in terms of composting. I'm making it up, but not really. Or, at the company they worked with, or at the accounting office that they work at, or whatever it might be. Anyway, that's the last thing.
Yeah, I had a similar thought there of no matter what your interest is, it can be easily translated into a sustainability job. So if you're in accounting, you can just go into carbon accounting. If you're in journalism, you can, study and go into sustainability journalism and communications. If you're consulting, you can go to sustainability consulting. So there's a world of wherever your interest lies, you can make it into the sustainability.
And see, Riley just gave me that when she said journalism, like there's a guy, his name is David Garrido. He works for Sky Sports, which is like the ESPN of Great Britain. And he's a sports presenter. And but he got very, very passionate about climate action. And so he on his own took and like Sky Sports are like, what? You talking about? I'm gonna do this segment on the environmental crisis that cricket is dealing with. And that was the first piece. And fast forward 3 or 4 years, this is his thing. And he has become, at a much higher level of sportscaster because of this. He made it his thing, and then it helped his career.
Yeah, I think you're right. You can use this as a way to fast forward and accelerate what you're doing in whatever industry you're in. Lou, the other Lou, you wanted to add something? You want to say
Yeah.
something?
Um, guess I just wanted to say that even if it's not changing your career path, there's always a way to get involved. Kind of, I mean, similarly to what Kim said in the chat, all jobs are sustainability jobs. But like for example, at New York Roadrunners, we have this communal passion about, you know, inclusion, accessibility, and we're all aligned on these things, but ultimately there's certain departments that maybe don't function under the sustainability umbrella. Like, of course, they want to further a mission, and of course, they want to help where they can. And I think that there's always an opportunity to bring that passion into your work life. For example, at New York Roadrunners, I manage the environmental team, which functions as an employee resource group essentially, but it's very simple. We don't really have a budget. We don't really have direction, but it's just a group for people across departments to come together and talk about their passion for sustainability and what we can do kind of as an internal group of people who have a similar passion, whether it be related to their work or not, and what we can do together to advance that. And so right now we're doing a series where members can present on something they're passionate about. So I went first and I went to the Olympics this summer, so I presented on everything that I noted sustainability related at the Olympics, and then it kind of took off from there. Our last presentation was a member on the volunteers team at New York Roadrunners, which, yes, all jobbers are sustainability jobs. He works with the sustainability team and in Green Team Volunteers, which is a type of volunteer position that we have. And he decided to present on his experience at the World Athletics Championships in Eugene, Oregon in 2022, and what he noted in terms of sustainability. So I think there's always somewhere for involvement, whether or not your work is related to sustainability, whether that be putting it into your actual day-to-day work efforts or bringing a community together of like-minded people. Yeah. And I think that's what EcoAthletes does very well as well. So it's bringing
Yeah,
those people together.
thank you,
I have
Lou.
one more thing, Miriam. I know I keep saying this is the last thing. I promise, I really do. If any, if any of you of the athlete soul folks are in the New York City area, we have the New York City Sports Sustainability Networking Group, and it is fantastic. The other thing is there's the Green Sports Alliance Summit, which Riley mentioned, where we actually met in person 2 years ago in Seattle. This year it's going to be in Miami, June 10th to 12th, and I'm not shilling for the Alliance at all. I've criticized them in my blog posts from time to time, but for a summit, if you're looking to get into this space and can get to Miami during that time period, you're just going to be blown away in terms of like everybody gets it. So
Can
anyway.
we, Lou, I think what we'll do is if you can share all of these dates and information with me, I'll share in the platform so that people know ahead of time and they can schedule for all of this and they can reach out as well. We're going to wrap it up just because we've gone over time. But thank you to the three of you and everybody else that come and joined. And maybe we'll do a part 2 with more Q&A. But I think this was a great introduction for us for athletes, all of EcoAthlete, and really appreciate your time, you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for
Have a
having me.
lovely weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miriam, really.
Thanks,
Thank
Miriam. Thanks, Lou.